Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version podcast is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I'm speaking with an amazing woman named Nelia. Is that how I pronounce that?
Yes, Nelia is perfect.
Yes. All right. Nelia lost her father in 2005 and at that moment made a promise to herself to live differently. Her intentions were pure as she dove headfirst into taking care of everything and everyone else while putting her needs dead last. Over the course of 12 years, Nelia ended up suffering with anxiety, depression, PTSD, loneliness, and overwhelm. She has come a long way since then and now leads a very different life. She is a 40 something Canadian girl, wife, mother, daughter, friend, and dreamer with grandiose ideas. She is the host of the Top 20 podcast called Giving Starts With You, the creator of the Ukulele Project, and the author of Giving My Heart Room to Breathe, a journey through grief, healing, and giving. Nelia now dedicates her life to helping others successfully execute their own unique passion projects because she believes that the number one way to heal ourselves is through helping others. So glad to have you here, girl.
I'm so happy to see you again, Sabrina. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic. I
That's great.
we had such a great time hanging out on your podcast. So I was so happy that you were willing to take some time out of your many things that you have going on in your world to hang out with me and share a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you
So
so much
thank
for having
you.
me on. And
Yeah.
I loved your music in the trailer. I was like
Oh,
grooving to the trailer the whole time. Hi,
I love it.
everybody.
I love it.
I'm
I love
Nelia.
it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. How has your week been?
It's been busy, but it's been good because I love what I'm doing. So,
Love
yeah,
it. I
yeah.
love it. Today, I actually I gained a day today. I thought it was Friday all day. And then it was Thursday.
I had that problem at the beginning of the week. I kept thinking we were, yeah,
Yeah, I don't know but it was cool because I was like, oh my gosh, I still have Friday. That's awesome.
get
Although
all the stuff done.
I'm constantly building my empire, so it's like does the weekends don't even matter. But like in the house, like my son's in school still and all that. So
You're incredible. I don't know how you get everything done. You're so amazing.
well, it's kind of like my expertise, my niche is time management and organization. So it's like
Yeah.
I have to, I have to. It's like even if I don't want to, I have to. But I love it. My parents raised me just to be. My dad was very like, if we arrived to go to like church, we called it the Kingdom Hall with our religion. But if we arrived on time, we were late. We like wouldn't go in literally we wouldn't if like it started at 9 and we pulled in the parking lot at 8:59 we would not go because by
Wow.
the time we walked in it would be 9 and he was not down with
Too
that.
late.
Yeah, so that's what
Wow.
I was raised with everything, so it's just in me. But anyways, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank
I would
you.
love to kind of just start out by giving you the floor for a few minutes and hearing a little bit about your backstory and your journey and where you originated, and then kind of go from there. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, growing up, I always felt a little different. I felt a bit of a misfit, didn't really belong anywhere. And I didn't really know it was because I had anxiety and depression and all of these things until this big, huge thing happened in my life. My father passed away, and that's when I formally got diagnosed. But I always felt a little bit I don't know, different because I felt too much, or I used to be made fun of because I would always lead with my emotions. But now, as an adult, I celebrate my heart because now I believe it's the best part of me. But I didn't feel like that for a very long time. So it's funny, sometimes things happen to us in our life that make us feel broken. And sometimes we don't come back from that. And sometimes it takes a long time. And it took me a long time. So, many times I talk to people and it's fascinating to hear their story because of where they've been and where they are now. And most people that go through something like that, all they want to do is help other people, right? Through
Yeah.
their story.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Storytelling is so important
Yeah. 100%.
for
You
sure.
know, when you kind of started realizing that you had this depression or anxiety, PTSD, when did it kind of come to light that you were dealing with that?
Yeah. So my father, like you had mentioned in my intro, he passed away at 59. And it was in 2005. And I was actually pregnant at the time. And I just, I couldn't deal. I couldn't deal with him being diagnosed. I couldn't deal with him. Um, I just couldn't manage any of my feelings during the whole process of him being sick. And then when he passed away, everything, like, I live my life now so different than I used to. And it wasn't until, I couldn't breathe and I felt like somebody was behind me consistently choking me. And I
Wow.
kept turning around and nobody was there. And this was like 6 months. I couldn't swallow. I just had all this, felt it like all in my throat. And my coworker's like, you need to go see somebody. And I finally went, and my doctor, he says to me, Nelia, he goes, I've known you for about 10 years now, and you have never felt the back of that chair when you come in here. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah. What
And
does
he
that
says,
mean?
you're always like sitting on edge, like through the whole appointment.
Oh, that's a good
And
observation.
he's like, I think I know why you're here. And he's like, you have this. And I was like, oh, yeah, no. People who have anxiety are people who are constantly worried about something. I said, I'm not worried about anything. And he's like, yeah, that's not it. It's not just people who are actively worrying about something. And, I had to take some medication and I started like learning about what I needed to do. But it was a relief for me because it wasn't until I knew what the name was for it, right? Because I didn't really know much about it. I'm like, oh, that's what it is. And I started to learn about myself and learn about things that I was really relieved. So next time I went to see my doctor, I sat in the back of the chair, right? He's like, you look a little more relaxed.
Oh, I love it.
But yeah, he nailed it. And all my friends knew it, my family knew it. I had no clue. So for
Wow.
me, it was so important that somebody said to me, hey, I think this is what you have. Now, I mean, so many people are talking about it, but
I know.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is great.
I know. Yeah. I totally agree. That's one of the things I'm actually appreciate. I didn't know when I started this podcast that more people, I thought I was going to have to be pulling teeth. I was
Mm,
like, all like, hey, do you think maybe? And it's been great. The people that are, not everyone is willing, but
yeah.
there is people that are willing to talk about their story and even their medication openly, which is really cool.
Mhm. And that's okay if they're not ready, but one day
Oh
the
yeah.
hope is they will be, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's
So,
not for everybody to tell their story. Some
yeah.
people
And
are,
that's
yeah.
yeah, and that's one of the reasons I started my show was because, I'm talking on here right now and everything, but if you knew me a few years ago, I would be so uncomfortable right now, like talking to people. And, I'm the last person who wants to go to a party and be around all these people. But when I'm talking about things that mean something to me and I
Yeah.
know can help other people, then I don't care about what I look like, what I sound like. Just do it, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not about you, right? It's about somebody else.
So wait a minute, wait a
But
minute. So this wasn't your thing. So then what made you
yeah,
start? Like, were you
yeah.
challenging
So,
yourself or what?
well, there were a lot of things I wanted to talk about, and I always felt that I wasn't allowed to.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you know what? I don't know. It was part of my healing. Yeah, I had to force myself. But in doing the show, why a podcast, right? Sometimes people ask me, and it was a podcast that saved me. And I
Wow.
wish I could remember the name of it because it wasn't just one or two, but you know, when you're reading, like when you go to a bookstore and you pick up a self-help book, or even as a teenager, I used to do that. But I used to cover it with like paper so nobody could see. So I used to, be on the Toronto subway. I'm in Canada. And I used to cover it so people didn't see, oh, the crazy girl or whatever the title was, right?
Yes,
So it's
yes.
like, oh my God, you're going to think I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. There's no way I need people to see the cover. And
Yeah.
so it would just make people more interested. So they would kind of look over and I'd like shut the book. I was so self conscious. And so I used to listen to podcasts because I'm like, nobody can hear what I'm listening to. I just put
Yes.
my headphones in, whether I was like huddled in a corner crying my eyes out. I'm like, okay, I want to hear about more depressed people because it's true. When you're in that state, you don't want somebody to cheer you up sometimes. Sometimes you just want to hear that there's other people that feel like you.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I was feeling that way, I would just listen to something like that and it would just help me. And nobody needed to know. They thought I was listening to music or
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I want to do that. I want to be somebody's safe place with the podcast that they can just pop it in. I know that might sound silly, but for me, that was my journey, right? Yeah, I don't know.
I
And here
love
we are,
it. I
two years
love
later.
it.
2
Yes.
years later, and I've met so many incredible people and listened to
Wow.
so many incredible stories. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely, definitely. So during this journey and all the things, the ups and the downs that you've been through, what do you think is the biggest challenge that you've
Yeah.
endured?
Um, so I had never seen anybody pass away before. Um, and yes, my father passing away was huge. But what kept me in, so for 12 years after he passed away, I couldn't talk about it. I cried, but alone. I couldn't do any of those things. I felt dead, like my life was over. And I used to have these dreams where he was buried alive, and it was just take over my life.
Wow.
And I'm a new mom, and I had been waiting to have a baby for 10 years. And here I am going, oh, this isn't how it was supposed to be. But it wasn't him passing away. I realized later it was all the suffering that took place, and I was his caregiver. That's what I couldn't deal with. That's why I couldn't talk about him. I couldn't. So my dad was a musician, but I couldn't hear his songs. I couldn't, if I heard a recorded, because he had a lot of like recorded videos and things. If I heard his voice, I would ask everybody to turn it off. Like I just couldn't hear it.
Wow.
But at the same time, yeah, I had this huge fear that I would forget the sound of his voice. So I was kind of like conflicted. I was like, oh
Yes.
my God, I don't even know what he sounds like anymore. And that used to make me very sad. So I think that's where I got all the PTSD and all of those things. I couldn't sleep. All these things were like haunting me. I don't know. But I think that was it. Like just going through, my father was a very proud man, and just watching him by accident opening the bathroom door, not realizing he was in there, and watching him, 80 pounds looking in the mirror and crying and not realizing that he, it was the first time he wanted to look at himself through the whole journey, right? And
Wow.
he's like, wow, that's me. So stuff like that is what is still difficult to talk about. So those types of things make it so real, and it's the suffering. When he passed away, it was kind of like, okay, it's time because, of all the suffering, right? I mean, I hate to say that, but I think that for me was what did it. And my life was so different. It was different because here I am, somebody who feels so much, and I was hiding everything. So my husband, I'm so lucky. My husband is amazing. I've been married 27 years. He is like my best friend.
Wow.
I have a son who's 15, who's amazing, and I have a wonderful family and friends. But I hid from them how bad it was. And one day I just decided, nobody's coming to save you. Like, you need to figure it out. And that's going to be the title of my next book. I'm just promising. I'm saying it here so I, finish that thing, right?
I love it. I love it.
But it's true. And yeah, I just didn't want to get up. I had no reason to do so many things. And when you're somebody who leads with your heart and then you feel that dead, um, yeah, I don't know. It was hard. It was hard, and that's why it took me a long time. And so that's why decided to start my business, because I'm like, I don't want people to waste that time.
Yeah.
Don't do what I did. Don't do any of the things that I did. This is what you should do. Because what a waste. But at the same time, I think, well, if I didn't go through all that, how would I be now, right? And I'm a completely different person.
It's such a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, it's tough, but we all have things, whether it's a death or a divorce or a relationship crisis or anything, a loss of job or health. Like there's something, sometimes more than one thing, that we all go through that can literally break us.
Yeah.
And for me it took me that long, but did the work, and here I am, right?
Yeah, 100%.